Welcome to MetaMinds, the show where we ask questions about the world of Web3 and how it impacts the world around us. I'm Jordan, aka JP Dizzle, with my trusted colleague Danielle, aka
Donatella Darko.
Today we'll explore a project called 0xmusic. 0xmusic is one of the top selling music NFT projects. Let's dive a little deeper. Hello, we are joined by the two founders of 0xmusic, Crypto Pianist and Electric. Thank you guys so much for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
How are you guys
Thank you.
doing on this beautiful day? I don't know where you are in the world, but it's gorgeous in New York.
We're doing fantastic. We're actually in Brooklyn.
Oh, nice.
I'm in Park Slope. And Crypto Pianist, where are you?
I'm in Carroll Gardens, which is a beautiful neighborhood in downtown Brooklyn.
Beautiful.
Brooklyn. Shout out Brooklyn.
All right, great. Just a couple questions about the origin of 0x. I see your Discord handle, Crypto Pianist. I assume you play the piano, is that true?
Yeah, I'm a recreational piano player. I wouldn't call myself a connoisseur or anything like that, or formally trained, but I play by ear.
Nice. So was part of your music past part of the inspiration of creating a music-inspired NFT? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a stage performer for several years, and one of the frustrations I've had with stage music is that there's the notation, the notation with stage with music that I've had was very, very cumbersome and very hard to read. So for that reason, I always envisioned a better musical notation, and I brainstormed a lot of different ideas. And eventually, this led to the seed of the idea of actually representing music and in programming languages, because programming languages fundamentally solve the problem of representing ideas very succinctly. So they've been developed explicitly for this purpose. And when you kind of think about the trajectory that sheet music has gone through, there hasn't been way too many iterations on it since the medieval eras. So this was really, in large part, the idea of representing music, which then also naturally kind of found its way into a genesis of creating programmatic generative music.
Cool. What about you, Electric? Do you have a music background, or are you a amateur musician, classical musician?
Yeah, not a very good one at that. Just a quick disclaimer there. Crypto Pianist and I have known each other since we were 3 years old. Unfortunately for me.
Nice.
So we were neighbors. We grew up kind of learning music together. So I initially played the guitar, and then I switched over to the drums, and then we had like a high school musical band, and so that's where my musical journey kind of started. And Crypto Pianist has taken it way further than I have, because he kind of performs here in New York City, and I don't anymore. But yeah, definitely very musically inclined. But I'd say I just don't have the skills.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, yeah, I mean, your project caught my eye because I don't see a lot of projects incorporating a musical element and that generative feature set. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the creation of this NFT. How did you go about with just developing the concept and actually launching it to the world? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I can talk about that. So honestly, 0xmusic has been many, many years in the making when you actually think about it. So I would say there were many different points in my life that actually led to the creation of ultimately 0xmusic, our Genesis collection. The first point I would say was a course I studied in Columbia on interactive music using the software called Max MSP. And that really kind of opened my eyes into how you could create interactive art. using programming languages, and just generally, technology, like introducing all this new technology into music, like really opens up the doors into how you can experience it. And I think that's the key part, is like how you experience it as someone, that can really, really change with technology. So I would say that was moment number one. Moment number two that I would say was pretty pivotal was when I went to Bonnaroo in 2014. I had to experience most of that music festival without a cell phone. And what that basically meant was it forced me to engage with the moment and to be vulnerable with the art that was being performed, because I knew that that was the last time I would ever hear it. There was no way of actually capturing it or screenshotting it or recording it. And I remember it was a Fish concert, and that Fish closed out the last day. And Fish, for anybody listening, they basically do these large improv sets. And when you listen to Fish, what they're playing, it may be the last time you actually hear what they're playing, because I don't think even they really know what they're playing until they get up there. And that really kind of led me to start thinking about the idea of like creating art that destroys itself. So I thought about that a lot, as what if there was a piece of art that basically self-destructed in a sense? What what would that help with? Well, the one thing that would actually help with is it would force users to make a very conscious decision of engaging and being vulnerable with the art, because so much of our modern lives, revolves around basically switching and context switching between so many different things that we just end up not really experiencing things to the fullest degree. When you put all of your senses into something, you put 100% of your mind to a song. When I listen to a lot of music today, I actually turn off all the lights. I still do what I used to do in high school. I turn off all the lights, put a good pair of headphones, and I engage with it. So really, I think the idea of 0xmusic was, how do we do that, right? So I had this idea when I went to Bonnaroo, and this was in the around 2014, I think. And but unfortunately, at the time, there really was no way of really realizing a piece of art like this, because when you actually think about a lot of the limitations of Web 2 technologies and Web 2 frameworks like Spotify and so on, it's ultimately a static piece of art. So you have to record a song, and then that goes on, let's say, some kind of a record, and there's really nothing you can do in terms of, there's no levels you can pull in terms of, having it be a dynamic piece or an interactive piece. So really using the sort of legacy frameworks would have been harder to achieve a lot of these ideas that I was beginning to have during Bonnaroo. So I kind of parking lotted that idea, but I did continue developing a lot of the kind of generative, like the mathematics behind the generative music, which is really the core technology of 0xmusic. I continued working on it, mostly, pen and papering, like abstractions around how you would represent, a song. And we can talk about this in a minute. But
Sure.
then moment number three, so we covered moment number one, which was when I got introduced to interactive art. Moment number two, this Bonnaroo festival. And then moment number three was last year when my co-creator, Electric, said, hey, those crazy ideas you had about, creating self-destructing art and all that sort of stuff. Well, I think there's actually now a medium for you to do this. And full disclosure, I actually didn't know too much about Web3 last year. And then he kind of explained the whole case, and he explained the whole vision of this project, what a project could look like. And that really blew my mind, and I was instantly sold. And it just spiraled out of control into what we know today, which is the genesis drop of 0xmusic.
That's great. Yeah, I don't know about you, Donatella, but every concert I go to, people are just filming it with their phones. But what are they trying to accomplish really? Is it just playing it back or sharing it on social? But what does that really accomplish for them, for that individual or for that fan? I'm not really sure. I guess it's not our generation though. So uh,
Yeah, and are they missing out on the experience by
it's yeah, the
by
experience.
holding up their screen? Something that you had said is one of my favorite memories growing up in late 90s, early 2000s was taking either my CD player, or which eventually would turn into my iPod Classic or the iPod Nano, sitting in my bed at night, headphones in, full headset on, laying in my bed, lights off. There's no internet to be had at that point, but I was fully listening to the music. And it's a genuine experience that we're struggling to. I feel I struggle to find right now because of all the distractions. So that's a really great
Yeah,
point.
but the beauty is with Web3, we can regain some of that. And I think that we can regain so many aspects of the lives that we, some of us old enough to know this, like really cherished. And I think that's what I really look forward to.
Absolutely. It's interesting too that you brought up a jam band. I'm a fan of jam bands. I am not a fish head, although I appreciate, that style. But there's something really magical about a show when they just go off and start to improvise, and it's something that you can't replicate. So it's really interesting using generative art to kind of capture that unique element.
Yeah, because ultimately what it is if you think about it, is it's a kind of scarcity, right? A fish concert is the definition of a scarce experience because you like think about all the levels here. You have to be physically present at the concert. And number two, you're never going to be able to experience what they perform. And I think that creates a kind of that forces you. I think that's really more than anything a mechanism to make you engage with it.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
So, for the non-technical person, make believe you're talking to my grandma. Rest in peace. Uh, what? How does this work? Like, how does the music get destroyed? What is the methodology around that to a non-technical person? It seems magical. So, can you kind of shed some light on the process or how that actually happens?
Yeah. So what I would say is, to your grandma or anybody listening, look, I assume you know how music is regularly created, right? So when a band goes into a room, they may discuss things like, hey, what do we want the beat to sound like? Hey, what do we want the chords to be? So the chords are just like a combination of notes that you might play on the piano or a guitar that come together in harmonious ways. So uh, that is basically exactly the process that we're replicating, but instead of humans doing it, it's basically computer code doing that same process. So the computer code now negotiates, if you will, what chords are going to be played. And then it says, okay, maybe we add these notes. Oh, let's add a little bit more tension in this part. Let's go to this chord to create that feeling of tension, and then we release it by going back to this. All the sort of decisions you make as a human being now being made in code. And basically and then arranging it all together, right? So ultimately, I think generative music really is music made by humans for humans, and I think this is the very, very big kind of eureka moment that I had as well. Was it's just a different way of doing it. You're using a different tool, but ultimately, it's the same thing, right? We humans love to hear certain chords, right? There's some chords that make us feel happy. There's some that make us feel sad. Think about all I want for Christmas is you. You get that warm, fuzzy feeling when you listen to that song. It's because it's. I mean, to speak a little musically, there's a minor fourth in there, and a minor fourth is known to give you that kind of warm feeling. So it's that same thing that we're just doing, but instead of humans doing it, we're doing it in computer code.
Right. And what was
And just to
yeah.
kind of,
Go ahead,
oh, sorry,
Alex.
I was just gonna add to that to kind of answer the second part of your question, which is the concept of music that destroys itself. So the algorithm that basically creates the songs is incredibly complex. So there's a huge number of variables that go into it, and so we just did the math, and each NFT can create approximately 10 to the power of 45 songs. So just to kind of explain it in layman's terms, if you were to play the NFT, a single NFT nonstop for 1 billion years, you would have listened to less than 0.1% of all the songs that it could create, right? So there's a huge kind of repertoire of potential songs that this algorithm can create. And the flip side of that is the fact that once you listen to a song, the likelihood of listening to that song again is essentially zero, right? Because if it's going to take trillions and trillions of years to go through all of the songs that are being created, once it's played, essentially it's never going to repeat. So that's essentially the concept of a song destroying itself, because once you listen to it, it's essentially gone forever, because probabilistically speaking, it's never going to repeat again.
Right. Wow. That
Yeah,
is cool.
what do you think Mozart or Beethoven would say? Like, if we could bring them back in time and sit them down and explain this to them, like, would it just be, psh?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say,
Honestly,
yeah.
let me add something to that. So I'm a big fan of Bach, as anybody knows. So Bach actually we pioneered counterpoint, right? So counterpoint, if nothing else, is basically a programmatic algorithmic structure to making music, because it has all of these rules. So for people who don't know what counterpoint is, it's basically a bunch of rules that you follow, right? So it's like the left hand and the right hand have to be these many intervals apart. Oh, and it has to be consonant when it's in the beginning of the bar. It can be dissonant when it's in the middle. So it's all these rules. I actually believe, and obviously there's no way to prove this, if Bach had access to technology, he would have actually programmed a lot of this. Because if you listen to a lot of his music, it does sound eerily generative in the sense that it's very, very kind of programmatic. So especially with Western classical music, which is so grounded in kind of rules, it actually lends itself very well to generative music. So I just got really excited when you brought that up.
No, it's true. I was browsing on your OpenSea, going through the different projects, just clicking, going through each of them, you can hear similarities, right, from real human beings that have made music, from classical to romantic, whatever it is, into this generative music. So there's something to be said, like you said. If they had access to the technology, then would they have created this? Maybe.
I absolutely believe so. There's no way to prove it, but I absolutely believe, because Bach, by the way, was a pioneer of his age. He was actually doing things that at the time was considered frontier, right? So I think it's having that excitement to kind of jump into new technology, and which is why I really think a lot of these musicians would have used these tools if they had them, because they were already pioneers of their age. And musicians in general, like that is a thing you see, right? Like the kind of the biggest musical acts were all, believe it or not, the common point is they were all dabbling in new technology.
That actually, if I had a question prepared for you. I was curious about who your favorite musicians or performing artists are, and it sounds like you're partial to Bach over here.
Honestly, I listen to so much stuff. It's hard to really put a genre on it, but I listen to everything from classical music, to like, let's call it alternative rock. I grew up listening to a lot of REM, Radiohead. That this was kind of my staple.
We used to play Nirvana a lot.
Oh, Nirvana, yeah. So a lot of alternative rock, grunge growing up, and then today I listen to a lot of mainstream music. I think mainstream music is really having its moment again. I think especially with Afro beats, like really coming into the foray. So yeah, so I'm all over the spectrum. I love all music. I just love what music does to you.
How did you pick the kind of sounds that you wanted the generative music to sound like? Like, for example, you could have picked like acoustic guitar sounds, but it was electric, kind of techno-esque sounds. But so can you explain that process or the thought process around that?
Yeah, I could explain. So to kind of understand what our project sounded like, it's kind of important to understand one of our goals or one of our principles that me and our co-creator considered non-negotiable. So one of the core things we considered non-negotiable was having project be on-chain. What does that mean? It simply means that anybody until the end of time can reconstitute our art from the Ethereum blockchain. It's really that simple. So this has some pretty profound implications on how the art sounds, believe it or not. because when you actually think about how modern day music is made, it uses a lot of, let's just say, MP3s and waves and things like that. You can't actually store a lot of that stuff on the Ethereum blockchain without going completely bankrupt. I mean, I imagine Jeff Bezos probably could, but it would cost him a pretty penny too, because it's it's very expensive to store things on the Ethereum blockchain. So this is where we had to kind of innovate. How do we now make something on chain, but also create sound? And the answer that I sort of banged my head on this was web audio. So web audio is basically this library that comes with all modern day browsers where it can create sound. So the whole idea here now is that you can have code that basically leverages web audio to create to create the audio in real time. So now let me go to the question that you were just asked. How do we pick these sounds? Well, the short answer is that the sounds we picked were restricted to what we could do on web audio, which we did what we could in terms of shaping the tone, shaping the sound, and shaping the tone. But for this Genesis drop, it was really using instruments that were on web audio, which happened to be electronic and synthy sounding.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense. All right. So can you explain kind of the user journey? So I'm purchasing an 0xmusic NFT. I receive the sound clip that always gets destroyed and keeps recreating itself. And then can you explain the process of a record or how I'm minting my specific NFT on the blockchain? And then what are you saying that users or NFT holders can do with that piece of music?
Yeah, I'll just start off with a little bit of a background about the project, right? So we launched in February this year. It's a collection of 777 audiovisual DJs that fall under 8 different types. So there's 8 different types or genres of music in the collection, and each NFT is essentially a DJ that creates an infinite number of songs in real time. So this project has 3 phases, right? The first phase is where the 0x DJs are born, which is essentially the public mint, where people were able to purchase them for the first time on the public market. So that phase is complete. We're now in phase 2. So phase 2 actually has 2 parts. The first part of this is something that we launched last month, where essentially what we want to do is we want to encourage collectors to explore their own musical creativity, right? And the way we've done that is by giving them access to MIDI files. So MIDI file is basically just digital sheet music. So it's a representation of the song that they're listening to. So today, let's say I'm a collector. I own a 0x DJ. I connect my wallet to 0xmusic.com. And once I do that, I can basically see all the NFTs that I own, and I can play them in the 0x Music Studio through our website. So when I play the music on the website, every song that's played creates a playlist which has MIDI files in there. So if I want to download that, I can download it, and once I do that, I can then do what I want with it. So, like Crypto Pianist mentioned earlier, we use web audio, but now you have the power to actually change the sound, replace it with the acoustic guitars, like you mentioned. You can change the beats, and you can really create your own. You can use your own imagination to create something completely new, right? So that was one part of phase 2, where we want to explore the creativity, or we want collectors to kind of use their creativity. The second part of phase 2 is where collectors can immortalize certain songs. So the flip side of having art that destroys itself is that if you really like something, it's lost forever. So to kind of help with that, we've endowed each NFT with a trait called a record. And a record basically allows the collector to mint a song that's playing into its own NFT.
Mm-hmm.
So different NFTs have different number of records, but each one has only a limited number. So once all of a 0xDJ's records are used, no more songs can be minted. So the collector still needs to be, picky and judicious about which songs they really like, but they can mint those into their own NFTs and then store them forever on the Ethereum blockchain. So phase three is something that we actually haven't revealed to the public yet, but it is where essentially the community comes together to create a masterpiece. So that's all that we can say about
That's
phase three,
awesome.
but it's going to happen sometime later in this year.
You heard it first here. MetaMinds. 0x music masterpiece coming soon.
And we must apologize. We did in the intro call you Ox Music, OX Music. Like we've been playing around with the different terms. So let's get it right.
0x.
It's 0x Music. Is that right?
Yep, we
Okay.
say OX music ourselves sometimes, so you're completely fine. Ox music, 0x music, OX music, all work.
This is a Web3 problem, right? We don't know how to pronounce things in real life because we're always typing and we're on Discord, but that makes sense. All right, you got it. 0x Music moving forward.
So, the philosophy around minting this NFT into a record and essentially controlling the life of that NFT. Can you just like when I explain NFTs to my father, he's like, "Okay, so you own the NFT and it's yours and that's your intellectual property." Can you talk a little bit about this IP concept? I read on your website about the CC0, like Creative Commons Zero. Can you just give a little background on that so for the interested listener?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the other things that we decided on pretty early was to make sure that, all licensing, we wanted to basically simplify licensing as far as possible, right? And the easiest and most comprehensive solution in our minds was to put all the licensing in the public domain. So essentially, the public owns the rights. So we don't own any of the rights to the actual music, and it simplifies it and it allows us to empower our community to really explore their creativity. Because now, and we're already seeing it today, if a collector wants to use one of their songs as an intro to a podcast, they can do
Mm-hmm.
that. There's no licensing
It's a
issues.
good idea.
Some of them kind of use the MIDI creations, combining two 0xDJs and then put them on SoundCloud. They can do that. There's no issue. So really the idea behind the CC0 licensing is to remove any obstacles and allow people to fully explore their creativity. And they've taken it to places that we as creators didn't even imagine. So we've had some collectors using it as background music when they're playing video games.
Mm-hmm.
Some use it as a fun way to kind of create new things with their kids on the weekend. So that was our vision, really, to empower collectors to do what they want with it by removing the obstacles of licensing.
Awesome.
That's probably what. Well, let me ask this question to you guys. Do you see this as the new frontier of music rights using blockchain technology?
I think so. I mean, I think there are definitely issues, right, in Web 2 with music rights. CC0 is one, definitely a clean solution. But for artists that want to own their work, they may explore other licensing mechanisms. Um, I've seen like a lot of projects essentially giving commercial rights to the collectors, right? So that's another kind of offshoot where where you create music as an artist, but whoever buys your art then has full commercial rights, and that makes a lot of sense to me as well, because if you think about it, like an NFT is essentially just a certificate of ownership or something, right? So it's a digital certificate because any art that you see, especially if it's visual art, anybody can right click save that. So everybody has access to that art. They can enjoy it, But what really drives value is the certificate of ownership and authenticity, right? So with that certificate, now you should be able to do whatever you want with it. Otherwise, what's the point of owning something? Because you could have downloaded it and experienced all of the value for yourself anyway, right? So that's my view, that it needs to have some sort of ownership associated with it in order to really, drive value for collectors.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. Licensing in Web 2, especially with music, is insanely complicated. Like when you think about all of the legacy infrastructure in place, ASCAP, BMI, publisher rights, all this stuff, it's very hard for even the most experienced veterans in the industry to explain any of this. And what this essentially creates is a lot of, in my opinion, fluff and a lot of inefficiency, right? So this is basically compounded by the fact that Web 2 doesn't have a tech native settlement layer for value, right? So we're going into a little off topic here, but Web 2 is very good with basically the free flow of information. But when you think about value, which is basically all of life, is basically comes down to exchanging value, right? So that was never built in. And what basically NFTs allow us to do, in my view, is remove a lot of these inefficiencies because we have something that's now a first-class citizen of the internet, with cryptographically signed authenticity, something that's basically resilient, that's going to last 1,000 years or more, So I think NFTs are going to simplify every part of the music pipeline in ways we really could not have imagined, from the creation of music to the distribution of music. So yeah, that's really my 2 cents. I'm very, very bullish on music NFTs in general.
Nice. I guess that leads me to this final part of our talk right now. I was basically perusing OpenSea, and you look at the different categories of projects. I click on music, and the amount of volume is so low compared to, I mean, the Bored Apes and Moonbirds, etc. Perhaps that's like a Black Swan event where it just caught fire at the right time in the right place. But what do you guys think about the lack of traction with music NFTs? And I'm talking just in a general sense of, in a business case of fundraising for music royalties or artists kind of raising money for their new label, that kind of thing. Why do you think there's a lack of traction there, but these 10,000 piece generative collections have caught fire, at least a portion of them?
It's a great question. The one thing is, I think we're seeing a lot more kind of attention go towards music NFTs in 2022. So I think going forward, that's going to change. One of the things I feel is important is to not just, take a song as it exists in Web 2, put it into an NFT, and then try to sell it. There needs to be something that's native to Web 3 embedded into that, and that's where like the magic happens. So I think it's important for projects to really think about what Web3 allows them to do that Web2 doesn't. And just to kind of take it back to our project, like I mentioned earlier, each NFT can create trillions and trillions of songs. The longest album on Spotify, I think, is like, I don't know, 40 hours or 8 hours, something like that. And they have something like 70 million songs, right? So there's no way Spotify would be able to hold even one of our NFTs, right? So just finding unique pieces that you couldn't otherwise do on Web3, I think will be crucial to kind of exploring that growth even further. But in general, I'm very, very bullish on music NFTs. And I think we are kind of beginning to see a little bit of traction come around.
Yeah, I want to add on to that. I think when we look back, like 10 years from now, like this is definitely the PFP era, right?
Yeah.
That we're living through right now. PFPs were the first use case. and it's it has a core piece of visual identity, which I think is a big part of its success. Like people could feel like they're representing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more than just signaling. I would say it's basically a way of basically establishing visual identity. But when you actually look at what's happening in 2022, the base layer for music NFTs is being created in front of our eyes at an exponential pace. I know on a day-to-day basis it doesn't seem like it, but when you look at what all these tremendous projects are doing around us, and I can name so many like Audius, uh, you know, uh, Sound XYZ, Sound Mint. I mean, there's so many projects that are basically, I believe, laying the base layer that is going to now have a network effect uh, in the coming months as more and more artists begin to onboard onto these platforms. At the same time, I do agree with what Electric said. I do agree with that sentiment. Uh, I think there does have to be a little extra something, than just having like an ERC11552 token of which is basically just like a duplicated NFT of like a static picture with
Mm-hmm.
with a song. That may not by itself have value. There's interesting things you can explore with utility or with music NFTs. Gated access like fandom, fan clubs and so on, which I think will also definitely add to the value prop of the music NFT space. So we are at the very, very beginning, is what I'll say. 2022 will, I believe, go down as the year that that started off this process, and started off the process to basically revolutionize the industry, which I think it's not a matter of if. In my mind, it's just a matter of when and how quickly can this fire basically catch on. Because, when you look at exponential adoption, there's typically a point in the graph when it
Mm-hmm.
just dips off, right? So we're obviously like at the early part of the graph now, but there's going to be a point, I believe, where all of a sudden it's going to catch traction so quickly. And I believe we will see music NFTs trading at the kind of crazy volumes that we see a lot of these other collections trade. And the other thing to keep in mind is the Ethereum blockchain, which is, I guess, the main blockchain. There are other ones, of course, do have limitations right now in terms of how much they can take. So there's also a lot of fundamental infrastructure that needs to be scaled out, which is happening, and all of that will also allow for other categories of NFTs to scale along with it and be the beneficiary of that.
You heard it here first. 2022, the year of music NFTs.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, to wrap this up, what's next for your project? What's next for 0xmusic? What could we be looking forward to? I know you were talking about the masterpiece that's coming out in phase 3. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your future plans and what we have to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, phase 3 is around the corner. Before that, we're going to wrap up phase 2 in the coming weeks, where collectors will be able to mint their NFTs into separate NFTs on the Ethereum blockchain. So that's going to happen soon. Phase 3, we're super excited about, where the community comes together and creates something that's truly a masterpiece. Um, and the other thing I did want to mention is that the collection that we launched is just the Genesis collection, so it's the first of many. Collectors that hold pieces from this Genesis collection will have benefits in the future, right? So we are going to do other things in the space. We aim to make this an elite brand in generative Web3 music. So that's the vision. There will be a lot of other projects that will happen. We're actually working on some of those behind the scenes, but I just wanted to mention that this is the Genesis project, and it's one of many. And finally, I did also want to announce ahead of NFT NYC, we're doing music Web3 meetup rooftop party at the
All right.
Delancey Hotel in the Lower East Side. You guys are obviously invited. June 19th at 6 p.m. is where our collectors can come and meet us. We're doing this alongside Warp Sound. That's another terrific project in the space. So we're excited to kind of blend both the communities and discuss all things generative music.
All
Amazing.
right, we will be there.
We will 100% be there.
Well, we'll buy an 0xmusic NFT first
Yes.
for our company wallet. That is.
Awesome. Yeah, and actually, if you do that, we may have something special lined up for you guys. So we're gonna do a little something special for our holders.
So we definitely need to
Yeah,
got
so,
it.
oh, yeah.
All right. So where can we find you on the internet if you want to shout out any places that potential fans could go to, or potential buyers, or anything relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first place to find a lot of info about us is our website, 0xmusic.com. If you're a collector, you can connect and then explore the studio where you can get access to the MIDI files and mint songs and all of that. But even otherwise, it's a great first place to get more info about the project. There's also from there you can access our Medium. So we publish articles every once in a while. There's something that actually we haven't talked about called 0x Moments, and I'll just touch on that really quickly. Where, like we mentioned earlier, each NFT was inspired by a certain moment in time. So there's 8 types of DJs, and what we do is on certain days in the year, we celebrate these moments of inspiration. So, for example, Crypto Pianist talked about Bach. Bach is one of the DJs. On his birthday, all 777 NFTs in the collection played in the style of DJ Bach for one day, for a period of 24 hours, starting from 12 a.m. UTC to 12 night,
Wow.
right? And alongside that, we also airdropped a custom NFT to holders of DJ Bach, and then we release an essay on Medium. So Medium, if you go there, you'll see essays on the airdrops that we released so far. So that's a great resource. Twitter, our Twitter is OX_music, sorry, 0x_music is the Twitter handle. And then you can find us on OpenSea, where the majority of our trading happens. And we also have some trading happening on LooksRare, but the vast majority is on OpenSea. So you can look for us on OpenSea as well.
Amazing.
Great. One last question. What do you guys think about the crypto markets right now? Should people be panicking? I see, NFT Twitter, they have a very short memory about how well they've done potentially. And they take, basically, it's like second by second, there's a lot of emotion involved with people's collections losing value. What would you say to these people?
I would say, I mean, obviously, don't panic, but make sure that you're not overextended. It's important to kind of realize that there are a lot of risks in the space inherently. So, make sure that if you have invested more than you should have, it's a good time to kind of reevaluate, think about things that you have like a lot of core conviction in, and keep those, and things that you're not as certain about, maybe kind of scale down on those positions, because a lot of the panic comes from this fear of over investing. So I'd say that's the first piece, to make sure that you're right sized to be able to maintain your lifestyle. And the other thing is to know that this too shall pass. We've seen massive downturns in the crypto markets over the years, huge drawdowns, and then there's a massive bull run at the end of it. So I think the crypto market's here to stay. NFTs are here to stay. It's important to kind of look at things from a long time horizon, and to kind of be cautious about what you're investing in.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that is always remember the fundamentals, right? So this is what I always remember. Web 2, flow of information. Web 3, flow of value. Do you believe that Web 2 needed an additional layer for the flow of value? I mean, that's really what a lot of this is a leveraged bet on. This isn't just my perspective. And for me, the answer is overwhelmingly yes. Is we did need basically a censorship resistant tech native settlement layer. So if I just remember that one little fact, all of this is just kind of like a weather versus climate discussion. We understand the long-term trends. We understand where this is going. But in the short term, it may rain today in New York. As beautiful as a day it is, you all know as a New Yorker, you might walk outside and it might rain. But that doesn't mean New York is a horrible place. And that doesn't mean that, summer is over, right? We understand that summer is just beginning because that's how climate works. So that's the way I think about this.
Do you mean if it's warm today that global warming's not real? Is that what you're getting at?
You heard that here first.
Hot take. So Crypto Pianist Electric, really appreciate you guys coming on. It's been a great conversation, and thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. Really appreciate it. You're doing very interesting things, and we love the project. We'll post links on our video for people to find the project. And again, really thank you for a great conversation.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for tuning into MetaMinds. We hope you enjoyed our interview with 0xmusic. You can find more information about them in the description. And head over to dynamic3.io to learn more about us and to learn how to work with us.